I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. My name is Jake, and I'm a 34-year-old guy who thought he had a solid marriage with my wife, Sarah. We had been together for 7 years, and honestly, I thought we were doing pretty well. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but who does? I had always been the trusting type, believing that love conquers all. But somewhere along the way, things changed, and I didn't even see it coming. In the months leading up to the discovery of Sarah's infidelity, I noticed little things. She was more distant, often glued to her phone, even during dinner. I would catch her laughing at something on her screen, but when I asked about it, she would just brush me off with vague replies. When I confronted her about it, she'd say things like, "Oh, just work stuff." Or, "You know how it is, people are so ridiculous these days." I wanted to believe her, but a nagging feeling crept into my mind like a persistent itch. Then there were the nights out with her friends. Sarah started going out more frequently, claiming it was for a girls' night. Initially, I was fine with it. I wanted her to enjoy herself. Her friends were nice and I trusted them. But after a while, I felt a shift. The late-night calls and whispered conversations became more frequent. She would sometimes come home smelling different, or I'd catch her putting on makeup before going out, something she never did before. It all started feeling off. One evening, I got home from work early. I was excited to surprise her with dinner, but when I walked into our living room, I found her phone lying on the couch. It buzzed incessantly, and curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up, and my heart sank as I saw a string of messages from someone named Mike. I didn't recognize the name, but the messages were flirty, too flirty for my liking. They exchanged inside jokes, and my stomach twisted as I read the words "miss you" and "can't wait to see you again." I was frozen in place, disbelief coursing through me. I had never considered infidelity as a possibility in our life. I felt like I was running a fever, and my head spun as I realized what was happening. My mind raced, piecing together all the little signs I had brushed off. My heart was pounding, and I tossed the phone back onto the couch, nauseated. When she came home, I confronted her. The way I presented it was calculated. I wanted her to confess, to admit to what I already knew. I asked her about Mike, and her reaction was instant. She turned pale, the color draining from her face. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights before she quickly shifted gears, launching into a defensive spiel about how it was just harmless fun and nothing serious. "Jake, it's not what you think. Mike is just a friend. We've been talking about work and stuff. You know how he is," she stammered, her voice rising in pitch, but I could see through the cracks in her story. "Harmless fun? Then why is he texting you like that?" I snapped back. My hands were shaking, and I felt a mixture of anger and sadness bubbling up. She tried to backtrack, throwing out excuses that felt rehearsed, as if she had practiced them in front of a mirror. "It's nothing really, you know how I get when I'm stressed. I just needed to talk to someone." Her excuses just fueled my anger. The betrayal cut deep, and the more she spoke, the more I realized how deeply she was trying to manipulate the narrative. I had always been the supportive husband, but this felt like a dagger to my heart. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead I just stood there, feeling utterly shattered. The emotional storm that followed was overwhelming. I went through a whirlwind of rage, sadness, and confusion. I didn't know how to process it. It felt like my world was collapsing and I was left standing in the ruins. Questions raced through my mind. How could she do this? Why would she throw away everything we built together? As the days passed, I wrestled with my emotions. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, and another part of me wanted to cut my losses and walk away. I felt lost, like a ship adrift in a storm, desperately seeking land. It was clear that I had to make a decision about what to do next, but how could I move forward from this? Would I really be able to trust her again? And if I chose to leave, would I regret it? The heartache weighed heavy, and I felt the need to find clarity amidst the chaos. The days that followed my confrontation with Sarah were a blur of emotional turmoil. I did my best to carry on with life, but everything felt heavy and surreal. I went to work, but I was only half present, my mind constantly drifting back to the betrayal. I couldn't shake the image of her texting Mike, laughing at his jokes while I was out busting my ass to provide for us. Each moment felt like a reminder of how naive I had been, and the sting of that reality cut deeper than any physical pain. One night, after a long day, I decided to dive into some research online. I found myself scrolling through countless forums and articles about infidelity. I couldn't believe how many people had gone through similar experiences, and reading their stories provided a bittersweet comfort. I saw how some couples managed to weather the storm and come out stronger, while others suffered devastating breakups. I felt like I was on a precipice, teetering between two paths, one that led to possible reconciliation and another that led to an end. The decision weighed heavily, but I knew I had to confront Sarah again, not just about Mike, but about our entire relationship. I couldn't continue living with the gnawing doubt and betrayal hanging over my head. So I started planning another conversation. I wanted it to be calm, rational, no accusations or yelling, just a clear discussion about where we stood. I wanted to hear her thoughts, get her to articulate what had happened. Maybe, just maybe, I would find a shred of understanding that would help me decide. The night of our conversation, I was a bundle of nerves. We sat down in the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. I brought up the affair again, but this time I wasn't looking for her to dismiss it. I wanted her to be honest and raw, and as soon as I opened the floor for discussion, I could see her defenses up. It was as if she were bracing for a storm. "Jake, I told you before it was a mistake," she began, but I cut her off. "A mistake? Sarah, this was more than a mistake. You were messaging him in secret, meeting him. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." My voice was steady, but I felt a lump forming in my throat. I didn't want to show weakness, not now. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I just needed someone to talk to," she replied, her voice trembling. "You've been so busy with work and I felt so alone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you chose to betray me instead of talking to me?" Her face twisted with frustration, and I could see the cracks beginning to form in her facade. "I didn't think it would go this far. I thought it was harmless. I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me, Sarah. You hurt me deeply. Don't you see that?" I could feel the anger bubbling just under the surface. "You chose him over us. You put energy into a relationship with Mike instead of putting that energy into fixing what was wrong with us. You made that choice." Silence enveloped the room, and I could sense the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. I saw the realization dawn in her eyes, but it felt too late. I had expected some form of remorse, a revelation that she understood the depth of her actions, but all I saw was confusion and denial. "I just want to know why," I pressed. "What did you find in him that you didn't find in me?" "Jake, please don't do this," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment. "You know how hard things have been for us." "Hard? You mean how hard it was for you to communicate with me?" The anger surged again, and I felt the heat of betrayal flooding my veins. "You didn't reach out to me. You reached out to him. You let him into our lives, into our home. What was it? The thrill of something new? Did you want to feel desired again?" She bit her lip, and I could see she was struggling to articulate her feelings. I don't know. Maybe it was just excitement. I didn't think it would matter. I didn't know whether to scream or cry." "You didn't think it would matter? You had an affair, Sarah. This matters more than anything." The tears finally broke free from her eyes, and they streamed down her cheeks. It felt like watching a dam burst, and part of me softened at her vulnerability, but another part of me hardened. I realized this wasn't a moment for compassion. It was a moment for clarity. "I need time to think, Sarah. I can't just overlook this," I said, my voice softer but firm. "I don't know if I can stay with someone who thinks betrayal is just a momentary lapse. Trust is everything in a marriage, and you shattered that trust." I stood up, the gravity of my words hanging in the air as I walked away. I needed space to process everything. I didn't want to make any rash decisions, but I felt my resolve solidifying. This was a turning point. I was beginning to understand that I couldn't let her betrayal define me. I had to take control of my life and future, even if I didn't know where that would lead me yet. After that fateful conversation with Sarah, a suffocating silence filled our home. Each room felt like a ghost town, haunted by memories that now carried a cloud of betrayal. I found it hard to sleep, tossing and turning, my mind racing over every detail, every moment when I could have noticed the signs. I was trapped in a cycle of replaying everything, trying to make sense of it all. Weeks passed, and the weight of the situation hung over me like a storm cloud. I went through the motions of daily life, but everything felt muted. I was still going to work, still putting on a brave face, but inside I felt like I was crumbling. My coworkers must have sensed something was off. They would shoot me concerned glances, but I brushed them off. I didn't have the energy to explain, nor did I want pity. Sarah was still living in the house, and every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. I could see she was trying to make amends, but her attempts only frustrated me. She would leave little notes around the house, texts that read, "Can we talk?" or "I miss you." But I wasn't ready to engage. I didn't want to feel like I was being dragged back into a relationship filled with half-hearted apologies. One night, as I lay in bed, unable to sleep, I picked up my phone and began researching betrayal trauma. I wanted to understand what I was feeling. As I read through articles, I found stories of individuals who had faced similar situations and how they had found their way to healing, some choosing to stay and work on their relationships, while others chose to walk away. I realized I had a choice to make, but it wasn't just about Sarah. It was about me and what I wanted moving forward. I started contemplating a plan. I needed to reclaim my life, my happiness. If Sarah didn't want to fight for our marriage, then maybe it was time for me to move on. I began jotting down my feelings in a journal, pouring out my heart and soul onto the pages. It became a therapeutic release, a way for me to process the whirlwind of emotions I was experiencing. I also began to implement small changes in my routine. I signed up for a gym membership, hoping physical activity would help clear my head. I started going for runs in the evening, using the solitude to think and reflect. With each mile I conquered, I felt a little more empowered. Each drop of sweat felt like a step away from the pain Sarah had caused me. I was reclaiming my narrative, and for the first time since the discovery, I felt a flicker of hope. But hope was a fragile thing, and it could easily be snuffed out. There were days when I'd find myself spiraling back into despair, particularly when I would see Sarah trying to connect with me. One evening, I found her cooking dinner, an act that was once a bonding experience for us but felt strange now. As she plated the food, I caught her glancing at me, her eyes filled with a mix of longing and guilt. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, my heart racing. "What's there to talk about, Sarah? You said everything you needed to the night we had our fight." "But I want to make it right," she pleaded. "I'm sorry for what I did. I never wanted to hurt you." Her words felt empty, and I braced myself against the kitchen counter, trying to find my voice. "Making it right doesn't erase what happened. You were with him. You chose to betray me, and now you want me to just pretend it didn't happen." I know it's not that simple," she replied, tears pooling in her eyes. "I'm just asking for a chance to show you that I can change." I shook my head. "No, Sarah, you've had your chance and you threw it away. Trust isn't something that can just be rekindled with a few apologies. It takes time, and right now I don't know if I can ever trust you again." There was a moment of silence as we both absorbed what was happening. I could see her struggling with her emotions, and it was painful to witness. But I couldn't let her pain sway me. I had to protect myself first. "Maybe we both need time apart," I suggested, my voice steady. "I need to figure out if I want to stay in this marriage, and you need to reflect on your actions. It's clear that we're both in different places right now." Her face fell, and for the first time, I saw the weight of reality hit her. "You want to separate?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It's not what I want, but I think it's what we both need," I replied, forcing myself to remain calm. "I can't live in this uncertainty, and I don't think you can either." That night we slept in separate rooms for the first time, the gap between us feeling like an ocean. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I had made a decision, albeit a painful one. I felt like I was stepping into the unknown, but I also felt a sense of relief washing over me. I was finally taking control of my life, and that was a step toward healing. The next few weeks were a blur of emotions. I sought counseling, unsure of where I wanted to go next but craving guidance. The more I opened up about my feelings, the more I began to realize I wasn't alone in this. I found strength in being vulnerable, and with each session, I learned to articulate my pain, my heartbreak, and my hopes for the future. As I began to focus on my own healing, I found the strength to envision a future without Sarah. Maybe it was time to embrace a new chapter in my life. The journey would be challenging, but I was ready to take it on, one step at a time. As the separation continued, I found myself on an unexpected path of self-discovery. Initially, the thought of being apart from Sarah was daunting. In the back of my mind, I still pondered whether this was the right choice. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to embrace my new reality. I started surrounding myself with friends and family, seeking comfort and support. One Saturday night, my buddy Mark invited me out for drinks. I hesitated at first. The idea of being in a social setting felt strange after everything that had transpired. But I needed to reconnect with the world outside my home. So, with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, I agreed to join him. We hit up a local bar, and it felt good to be around familiar faces. Mark was relentless in his efforts to uplift my mood. "Dude, you've got to stop dwelling on Sarah. You deserve better than that," he proclaimed. As we settled at the bar, beers in hand, "Let's focus on having some fun." I laughed, appreciating his enthusiasm. As the night wore on, I found myself loosening up. The music was loud, laughter rang through the air, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a semblance of happiness creeping back in. Mark introduced me to some of his friends, and they welcomed me with open arms. Being around new people, free from the weight of my marital issues, was liberating. However, amidst the revelry, a part of me still felt hollow. I was grateful for the distraction, but the truth of my situation lingered just beneath the surface. As the night drew to a close, I found myself stepping outside for some fresh air. The cool breeze hit my face, and I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the heavy thoughts. "Hey man, you okay?" Mark asked, joining me outside. "Yeah, just thinking," I replied, leaning against the wall. "It's hard to let go, you know." "I get it. But you have to look at it this way. You did what you had to do for yourself. It's not easy. But you're taking steps toward healing. That's what matters," he said, offering me a reassuring pat on the back. His words resonated with me. I had taken control of my life, and while it was painful, it was also empowering. I realized I had to keep moving forward even if it felt like I was stepping into the unknown. As I got back into my routine, I started to notice changes within myself. I was eating better, exercising regularly, and exploring new hobbies. I even took up cooking, which I had always put off. I found solace in the kitchen, experimenting with new recipes, and it became a therapeutic outlet for my frustrations. It felt satisfying to create something from scratch, and I learned to appreciate the little victories. But even with all these positive changes, there were moments when memories of Sarah would flood back. I would see couples out in public, laughing and enjoying each other's company, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. It was a reminder of what I once had, and the grief was still present, though it wasn't as overwhelming as before. One particular evening, as I sat on my couch, I received a text from Sarah. My heart raced as I considered whether or not to open it. It had been a while since we'd communicated, and I felt a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Finally, I clicked on it. "Hey, can we talk? I really want to clear the air," she wrote. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to scream at her for what she had done, while another part felt a flicker of hope that maybe we could find some closure. After a long internal debate, I decided to respond. "Sure, let's meet tomorrow afternoon." The next day felt like a whirlwind. I arrived at our favorite coffee shop, my stomach twisting with anticipation. I ordered a coffee and took a seat, my eyes darting to the door every time it swung open. I wasn't sure what to expect, but after everything that happened, I braced myself for anything. When Sarah walked in, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions. She looked different, her hair was down, and she wore a simple but elegant dress. There was an aura of vulnerability about her, and as she approached the table, I noted the apprehension in her eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," she said softly, sitting down. "Let's get straight to it," I replied, wanting to cut through the small talk. "What do you want to say?" She took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting on the table. I've been doing a lot of thinking since we separated. I realize how much I've hurt you, and I'm genuinely sorry for everything. I didn't think about how my actions would impact you. I appreciate the apology, but it's going to take more than words to fix this, I responded, my voice steady. You broke my trust, and that's not something easily repaired. I know, she acknowledged, tears welling in her eyes, but I want to work on myself. I've started seeing a therapist, and I'm trying to understand why I made those choices. I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself. I was surprised, but also skeptical. You think therapy is going to change everything? Because it's going to take a lot more than that for me to even consider getting back together. I know it won't happen overnight, she admitted, but I want to show you I can change. I miss us, Jake. I miss the life we built together. Her vulnerability struck a chord within me, and I found myself torn. There was a part of me that still cared for her. The good memories of our relationship were hard to erase. But I had worked so hard to find my footing again. I wasn't sure if I could risk going back to the way things were. What do you want, Sarah? I asked, searching her eyes for sincerity. Do you think will happen if we try again? I want to rebuild our trust brick by brick. I know it will take time, but I'm willing to fight for it, she said earnestly. I sat in silence, weighing my options. Could I really do this? Was I ready to open my heart again, knowing the potential for heartbreak? Or was it better to keep moving forward without her? Ultimately, I decided to take a step back and focus on my own journey. I think it's too soon for me to consider getting back together. I need to see you genuinely committed to changing. Not just saying it. I need time to heal and think about what I want. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was proud of myself for standing firm on my boundaries, but I also felt the familiar pang of loss. This was a turning point in my journey, and though it was painful, I knew it was necessary. I was learning not only how to cope with the betrayal, but also how to prioritize my own happiness first. It was time to keep moving forward. In the weeks following my conversation with Sarah, a sense of clarity began to emerge. I was deep into my healing process, and I learned to cherish the time I had carved out for myself. I threw myself into my work, focused on my fitness journey, and continued to explore new hobbies. I even joined a local cooking class, which was not only fun but also a way to meet new people who shared my interests. Despite my progress, there were still moments when I would feel a twinge of sadness. I would see couples enjoying life together, and I couldn't help but think about what I had lost, but I also recognized that I was stronger than I had been before. I was learning to embrace my independence and to enjoy my own company. I was rediscovering who I was when I wasn't defined by my relationship with Sarah. One evening, while I was out for a run, my phone buzzed with a notification. I paused to catch my breath and glanced at the screen. It was a text from Sarah. Can we talk again? I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I really want to show you how committed I am to change. I felt a mixture of frustration and curiosity. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to continue focusing on my own life without looking back. But another part of me felt a sense of responsibility to hear her out. After all, we had shared so much, and she deserved a chance to explain herself. Whether or not I was ready to take her back was another story. Okay. Let's meet up tomorrow, I replied, my heart racing with anticipation and anxiety. That afternoon, I arrived at a small park, a neutral ground that felt less emotionally charged than a coffee shop or our home. As I waited for her to arrive, I mentally prepared myself for whatever conversation lay ahead. When Sarah showed up, she looked more put together than ever, her demeanor radiating determination. Thank you for agreeing to meet, she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Let's get to it, I said, trying to keep the atmosphere straightforward. What's changed since we last spoke? She took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine for understanding. I've been going to therapy regularly, and I'm learning a lot about myself, why I made those choices. It wasn't just about you or our relationship. It was about me feeling lost and unfulfilled. I thought I needed excitement, but all I did was hurt the person I love the most. I listened intently, gauging the authenticity behind her words. And what do you plan to do with that realization? I asked, probing for deeper insight. I want to be better for myself, she replied earnestly. But I also want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve. I know it will take time and I'm ready for that commitment. I've started setting boundaries in my life. I don't want to lose you, Jake. You mean too much to me. Her words hung in the air, a powerful mix of vulnerability and hope. I wasn't entirely convinced, but there was a part of me that wanted to believe her to see if she could truly change. What does that look like for you? I asked. I want to take it slow. I'd like to start with clear communication. I'm learning how to express my feelings without running away or seeking attention from others. I want to show you I can be dependable and trustworthy again, she explained. As she spoke, I felt a flicker of something, a glimmer of possibility, but I also knew it wouldn't be easy. Sarah, this is going to take a lot of work. Trust is not something that just comes back overnight. It's going to be hard for both of us. I know, she replied, her gaze steady. But I'm willing to put in the effort. I want to earn your trust back. I took a deep breath, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to walk away, to keep moving forward without her, but another part of me hesitated, considering the potential of rebuilding something that had once been so good. If we're going to do this, it has to be on my terms. I need to see that you're genuinely committed to this process. I understand, she said, nodding. I'll do whatever it takes. The conversation continued, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of hope. We discussed the importance of setting boundaries, the need for open communication, and how we would navigate this delicate dance of rebuilding our relationship. I still had my reservations, but I could see she was genuinely trying, and it made me question if maybe there was a path forward for us. As we wrapped up our conversation, I found myself feeling lighter. It was as if a weight had lifted, and while the road ahead would be challenging, I had a newfound clarity about what I wanted. Let's take this one step at a time, I said, offering a cautious smile. We'll see how it goes. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. We started going out together again, but instead of diving headfirst into intimacy, we took it slow. It felt different, more deliberate. I made it clear that I needed to see her actions aligning with her words. I asked her to communicate openly about her feelings and any struggles she faced, and she obliged. In her therapy sessions, she began to share her progress with me, detailing her reflections on our relationship and her own self-worth. We talked about the issues that had led her to seek validation outside our marriage, and while the conversations were sometimes painful, they were also liberating. It felt as if we were peeling back the layers of hurt, slowly uncovering the roots of our relationship and exposing the scars we needed to heal. I began to notice shifts in her behavior. She was more present and engaged, actively participating in discussions about our future. Little by little, I saw the Sarah I had fallen in love with. The laughter returned, along with the sense of camaraderie we once shared. However, the shadow of betrayal still loomed over us, a constant reminder of the work we needed to do. There were moments when doubts crept back in, especially during times of stress, when I would question whether I could truly trust her again. But I reminded myself that this process would take time, and the road to recovery wasn't a straight path. It was filled with twists and turns, and I was determined to navigate it with caution. As summer approached, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. We were both committed to this journey, and even though we had a long way to go, I could see the potential for a brighter future. For the first time since the affair, I felt hopeful that perhaps we could find our way back to each other, stronger and more resilient than before. As summer unfolded, the warmth of the sun seemed to parallel the gradual thawing of the ice that had formed between Sarah and me. We spent more time together, rediscovering the little things that had brought us joy before the betrayal. We went on hikes, cooked meals together, and laughed over silly movies. Each moment felt like a step toward healing, but I was still cognizant of the fragility of our situation. I learned to balance hope with caution, reminding myself that trust wasn't a switch that could be flipped back. It took constant nurturing and effort from both of us. Sarah continued to attend therapy and made it a point to share her progress with me. I appreciated her commitment to self-improvement, and while I still felt nervous about the future, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had seemingly vanished during those dark days of betrayal. One evening, we decided to take a trip to the beach. It was a spontaneous decision, one that carried an air of normalcy that had been missing for so long. As we walked along the shoreline, the sound of the waves crashing against the sand created a soothing backdrop. We held hands, and for the first time I felt a sense of peace wrapping around us. "Jake," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "I know it's been a long journey, and I'm so grateful to you for giving me another chance. I want you to know how much I appreciate it." I glanced at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "It hasn't been easy, but I can see you're trying," I replied. "I want you to succeed, not just for us, but for yourself." She nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want moving forward. I want to rebuild our relationship, but I also want to make sure that I never lose myself again. I need to be whole on my own before I can be part of us again." Her words resonated with me. I realized that her journey wasn't just about repairing our marriage, it was about personal growth too. "That's a good perspective," I said, squeezing her hand. "I've been focusing on myself as well. I think that's important if we're going to make this work." After our beach trip, we settled back into our routine with a newfound sense of purpose. We made a pact to prioritize communication, setting aside time each week to discuss our feelings and any concerns that arose. It was a commitment to transparency, a way to ensure we didn't fall back into the traps of misunderstanding that had contributed to our troubles. As summer turned into fall, I felt more secure in our relationship. Sarah's effort to change was evident, and I began to trust her again, step by step. We celebrated small victories together, like her finishing a difficult project at work or me hitting a personal best in the gym. We cheered each other on, and it felt good to be in a partnership where encouragement and support were at the forefront. There were still moments of doubt and insecurity. Occasionally, I'd find myself replaying the past in my mind, but I learned to challenge those thoughts. I reminded myself of how far we had come together, focusing on the positives rather than dwelling on the negatives. On the anniversary of our wedding, we decided to celebrate in a way that felt special. We had dinner at a fancy restaurant, and as we toasted with our glasses of wine, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "To us," I said, raising my glass to finding our way back to each other. "To us," Sarah echoed, her smile warm and genuine. "And to new beginnings." As we sat together, reminiscing about our journey, I realized that while the shadows of betrayal would always linger, they no longer defined our relationship. Instead, we were building a new foundation, stronger, more resilient and forged through the fire of adversity. Reflecting on this experience, I learned some valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of honesty. I understood that relationships can endure the most profound challenges, but it takes commitment, effort, and a willingness to grow. I learned to value my own worth and to recognize that my happiness mattered. I could no longer allow myself to be defined solely by the pain of infidelity. I had chosen to reclaim my narrative, and in doing so, I found that I was stronger than I ever thought possible. Life would continue to throw challenges our way, but I was ready to face them, knowing that love, when nurtured, can rise from the ashes of betrayal and emerge more vibrant than before.